What if there was a product that could help you control cravings, burn more fat, boost your metabolism, promote healthy blood glucose levels, lower inflammation, optimize insulin sensitivity, support healthy blood lipid levels, and support healthy blood pressure? Introducing Bellatrim.
My wife has been taking Bellatrim now, and she said, Brandon, we've really got to promote this because people don't understand this isn't just about a comprehensive weight management. It will help regulate your blood glucose levels. It will lower bad cholesterol. Overall, it's good for your cardiac health. And she said there's a lot of science behind this.
G'day, I'm Dr. Mark Miller for Bella Grace, and I'd like to have a chat with you about Bellatrim, our comprehensive weight management product. Now, most people early on will register a reduction in cravings associated with Bellatrim. How does it do that? Well, it does it by changing the levels of hormones that are associated with either hunger or satiety. It lowers the levels of ghrelin, a hunger hormone, and it raises the levels of GLP-1, the satiety hormone. There is an absolutely fascinating action on a metabolic switch called AMP kinase, AMPK. AMPK is associated with the preferential burning of fat as a metabolic fuel. And as a result, you have a reduction in visceral fat and reduction in waist circumference. It also helps regulate blood glucose. Blood glucose is a huge factor in weight management. It also improves your microbiome. We do that by several ways. One, there's an ingredient in there that stimulates greater diversity. And the other one is prebiotics, FOS and GOS, that help feed the good bacteria, gentrify your microbiome. So, Bellatrim, comprehensive. Enjoy it.
To learn more about Bellatrim and other Bella Grace products, visit melissahousebg.com.
Vandersteel American Made Foundation co-founder, and my co-host Maureen Steele. She's also with American Made Action and Foundation co-host as well. Great to be with you, Maureen. This is a really deep conversation, and we're trying to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time here, looking at America through the lens of history and what in fact happened to our sovereignty, to our freedoms as our founding fathers so prescribed. And we're going to give people sort of a high level overview. And in this segment, I want to talk about what happened in 1933, because as we explained in the last segment, we really lost our sovereignty through the 14th Amendment. And we're beginning to understand that the United States really has been operating like a corporation for some time. When people go special interests and global corporations have been running our country, it's not a lie, because our country has been run like a corporation since they incorporated it in the Organic Act of 1871. But they've turned us into chattel. And in 1933, we really took a big blow, because this was right during the Great Depression era, and facing massive economic collapse, the president then, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, removed the United States from the gold standard and declared a national emergency. So, Maureen, just on that fact alone, that had deleterious consequences across the board. We're still feeling it today with the hyperinflation we're looking at. Add a little more color to that if you can.
Sure. He did it with Executive Order 6102. And basically, he took the U.S. citizen off the gold standard, meaning that at the time, you could take a $20 bill and have it turned into gold. You could take gold. He made it illegal, actually, to own gold unless it was in jewelry or, a minuscule amount. You couldn't have large amounts of gold. And so that happened in 1933. That started turning our dollar into fiat. And what finished the deal was in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard, because internationally we were still on the gold standard after 1933, and foreign governments could cash dollars in for gold. gold bricks and bullion from the United States. He took us off the gold standard internationally, which means for all these years, we've all been dealing in fiat money. And for those who don't know what fiat is, it's as good as monopoly money. It's the only thing backing the value of that is the work of the people. And again, they did some very ingenious evil planning. But basically what it did, if we can back up a little bit, in 1915, that's when birth certificates were introduced for the first time, and they didn't catch on. People still recorded births and deaths in the family Bible, and that's how it had been done since time immemorial. And it was in 1933 that it became a nationalized standard that you had to have a birth certificate. And that is how they kept track of the workforce. That's how they knew they could tax you. And that really is what backs up the value of the US dollar. And you hear presidents say it all the time. It's backed up by, the American people. And that's exactly what it is. It's you, the taxes they anticipate you earning in the course of your lifetime, your work product in your life. And so everyone is basically, like Ann said, chattel. We all have a price tag on our heads because our money actually has no value at all. In fact, it's a debt note. It's we've talked about this before, Anne. It's almost everything that we think is so. It's actually the reverse of it, and so it's hard to wrap your head around that everything we've learned is a lie, but it pretty much is.
It pretty much is. And according to the redemption theory, the United States was actually bankrupt. Really, truly bankrupt. And we had to use our own people, citizens. Again, remember, they took us out of our state sovereignty as an American from Virginia, New York, wherever, Ohio, and they made us United States citizens, which we really became federal debt slaves at that point. So they're using the citizens as collateral, the full faith and credit of America, which is its people. And they used us as collateral in trade agreements with foreign governments. So basically, each birth is basically adding a new asset to the general ledger of America, to the United States. So this is really kind of, when you think about it, you start to look at cows on the field. As I live here in Florida and I drive by a lot of cows, I look at each cow and I go, that's really one of us, because that's cattle/chattel that is out there to be monetized and to be put to work and to be slaughtered. And I think what we've seen with COVID is sort of like they said, well, we have too much chattel now and we've got too much debt and we didn't collateralize our actual chattel very well. We've overspent. And so they now need to get rid of us because we've become a burden on the system that they've put in place to, quotes, protect us with Social Security. So, I mean, when you start to look at it through this lens, you can see very clearly where we've gone off the rails. And of course, once our money was no longer redeemable in gold, the only thing guaranteeing the United States currency was that full faith and credit of the United States, essentially the productivity of its people. So the FBI, Maureen, again, another unconstitutional agency. They weren't even chartered by Congress. They have their own analysis of sovereign beliefs notes that they assert that the United States now uses citizens as collateral, issuing Social Security numbers, like you said, and birth certificates to register people in trade agreements. Does this correspond as something that would be true to you when you hear that there's a secret Treasury account valued in millions? Are you hearing this stuff from other people out there that are talking about President Trump is about to unleash some sort of secret vault of money? Is that possible?
I've heard rumblings of this, Anne, and I've talked to a number of people that have, again, studied this for years. They call it a Sesta KV trust. I don't know. I've never seen it. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think anything would surprise me at this point. They've been doing so many backroom deals. I think what Doge has uncovered has blown a lot of Americans' mind. It even blew mine. I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. The financial malfeasance and the racketeering and the money laundering. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was, something else going on. And if that's the case, then we have unlimited wealth. If the rumors I've heard is true, and if President Trump does unleash that on the American people, that will be the greatest downfall of wealth I think we've ever known.
Well, the Federal Reserve has been behind, the international banking cabal, which in this, of course, is the Western banking system, something that's completely, they've been trying to, they have weaponized against people in Europe and any countries attached to the central banks for well over 100 years now at this point. This has produced perpetual debt. They are forever getting, they're basically printing money against what our own government is developing in terms of debt, i.e., treasury bonds, right? We're issuing bonds so that we can go into the Federal Reserve, say, hey, we've just, issued this debt. Americans are buying it. Foreign governments are buying it. Will you print money equivalent to the debt we've issued? And then we'll pay you back with interest using the taxes coming out of the Internal Revenue System, which again comes back to us, the work that we produce. They're taxing our labor. Again, this is very, if people look at it through this lens, I think, Maureen, they can clearly understand just how insidious this entire position that our country has put the American people in has become. We are literally debt slaves, living and breathing. We are assigned numbers and we're treated like chattel in a pipeline. And they look at Maureen Steele, they look at Ann Vandersteel, they look at Joe Schmo and they go, based on what we know about their surroundings, their environment, we can project they're going to be worth X amount of money that'll be worth Y amount in tax revenue. So that's what we can expect from this particular individual and put it into the column for this is the wealth that we can now leverage against, right? Isn't that kind of how it all works?
Yeah, it's kind of like futures a little bit in the stock market. They're betting on what you're going to earn. And I think the system is collapsing for a number of reasons, but one of them is that we just don't have the work product that we used to. Everything is overseas. We kind of saw it in COVID very clearly that there's so many Americans, especially the younger generations, they simply don't want to work anymore. So we're not generating those tax dollars. Not to mention the fact that, it's unconstitutional. They can't be taxing us like that.
Right.
We didn't vote for that. They didn't have our approval for that. And the Congress seems to think that it's okay for them to vote for it. They can vote on taking more money from us. And I think it's become very, very clear with DOGE exactly what they're doing with our tax dollars. They're, buying mansions with it and paying for beautiful weddings. So
yes,
that's just not flying with the American people anymore. They see it now.
No, it's not flying. So basically what can say categorically is that the United States money system is fundamentally a debt system. Money is loaned into an existence, right, out of thin air, because we just create a bond, and interest ensures that the public is always in debt to the banks or to the Federal Reserve. So, I think we can safely say at this point, the dollar has now lost about 95%, if not more, of its value thanks to inflation. And then the national debt, over $36 trillion, has skyrocketed in parallel. So would it be of any surprise, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we move into the next segment, we've got a couple of minutes left, but income taxes were basically introduced the very same year that the Federal Reserve Act was passed, of course, in the dead of night. For those that have never read The Creature of Jekyll Island, they should, because they didn't have a quorum. They didn't have enough senators to actually pass this into law, but they did it anyway. And it was literally to enslave Americans, because this is a system they need. This is what they've been banking on for some time. So does it surprise you to know that income taxes and the Fed will be launched at the same time, Maureen?
No, it doesn't. And to your end, The Creature of Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. G. Edward Griffin is still alive. He's in his 90s. And it's again, for people that always have the question, what can I do? Read that book. You can get it on Audible. You can get it, to listen if you prefer a book on tape. That should be a must read for every American. It basically explains how they created the Fed, several elite families. It was done on Jekyll Island. That's where the name comes from. And it certainly is a creature. It's a multi-headed creature, but it's not a government entity. It's a private group, but the government seems to give it that power. And just by the name, it's trickery. The Federal Reserve. I mean, up until, a number of years ago, I thought it was part of our federal government. It is not. Same way as these agencies are not. We're led to believe that it's a lie.
Right.
And so they're controlling our finances, and they're deciding interest rates, and that's greatly affecting our economy. And when they make adjustments, it's never for the benefit of the people. And that a government just can't be that. Our charters of freedom, again, say it always has to benefit the people. There's nothing about that system that benefits the American people. It's to our detriment. We are slaves in a slave system, and we have been for generations.
You're right. And the 16th Amendment, we're going to get to that controversy next, because in 1913, when the federal government basically authorized an income tax, there was basically very little known at the time about whether this amendment was actually properly ratified by the states. I've done a lot of interviews with different tax whistleblowers, and we're going to get into that. So stick with us. We'll be right back, because the 16th Amendment may or may not apply to you. Don't go anywhere.
July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from this from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign, and Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria, where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy. I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I can eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is the phytoplankton is microscopic. It's God's microscopic food. And the Gadatiana is the most nutritionally comprehensive strain phytoplankton in the world. David Hunter studied phytoplankton for 20 years because he worked for Tom Harper, and he was there in person and witnessed Tom's recovery. It's about getting pure nutrition inside your cells. And what happens, your body balances again, or goes back to homeostasis. And when your body is pH balanced or in homeostasis, disease can't grow. It is literally microscopic, pure single cell plant food with protein and omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6 fatty acids, with amino acids and vitamins and minerals. 1 scoop a day. There's 90 billion plant cells in here, just for everyday nutrition and energy and, cognitive support, because this is God's pure nutrition.
Go to melissahousegpa.com today. Discover the science and learn more about the wonderful benefits of Gadatana phytoplankton. That's melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com.
And welcome back. Segment 3 here on American Made. We're going to be talking about the legal ownership of citizenships. And when Maureen and I last left, we were talking about the Federal Reserve and the 16th Amendment, and how the 16th Amendment may or may not actually apply to you. Before we get into the legal ownership section, Maureen, let's just quickly finish up on the income tax piece, because the income tax, if you read the statutes and the Title 26, which was never enacted into positive law, which by definition means there is no law that says you have to pay tax on your income and labor. Does that apply to every U.S. citizen, or does it apply to the U.S. citizens that live in D.C.? What is the sort of demarcation line there?
Yeah, it actually does just apply to people that live in D.C., in the District of Columbia. It doesn't apply to the rest of us yet. Again, it's something that most people don't know. Most most CPAs, when you go to get your taxes done, they don't know. We've been dumbed down for so long, and we're just not taught these things. And it's deliberate, because if you don't know, you can't fight the system that they put in place. So the only people that need to pay income taxes are people who live right within the District of Columbia.
It's fascinating. The more you know, the less you have to pay. So take that to the bank, but do your own research. It's all right there in the codes. You can go and read this for yourself. We're just sort of simplifying this for you so that you can make better decisions for you and your family. So let's talk about how the birth certificate system actually controls you. You alluded to that earlier in the show. I think it was in the first segment, Maureen, but we need to kind of look at each person's birth certificate as basically making them a financial instrument used by the government as collateral for borrowing. Break that down a little bit more for us, because there's QSIP numbers and people don't even know what a QSIP is. There's bond accounts that are created. What are all the instruments that are around the whole idea of getting a birth certificate?
Right. So I mean, recently I've heard people who have actually just yesterday who have lost their children over not signing the birth certificate, not wanting to sign their child over to be a debt slave. And basically that's what it is. And none of us would have done it had we known, but that is what registers your child to be, they track the labor force that way as soon as you're born. So then you get your number, which is your social security number. They make it sound very nice at the hospital. The nurses come in and, oh, sign this and we'll send it off to social security for you. And you'll get the social security card for your child sent in the mail. And everyone thinks that's good. Now you have a dependent to claim on your taxes, which you shouldn't have to pay in the first place. And so what you just did was you just told the government you gave birth to a new slave for them. And they're going to track that slave, and they use it. Well, you can't enroll them in school unless you're without a social security number. Well, unless you're an illegal alien, and then, have at it. That's just fine. So in 1933, prior to that, you were just someone's son or someone's daughter. And then after that, you became, and you were owned by the state, and they project out how much money you're going to generate. And like Ann said, they use that. It's kind of like futures. They use that to project how much money you're going to bring into the system. And that's the collateral on loans. So on the back of those, like you mentioned, sorry, Ann, the QSIP numbers, the codes, that's all used and traded actually on the stock exchange. Dr. David Martin has a plethora of information on this. Again, there's so many trusted scholars that have really looked into this. But you can go, there's a website, I've brought it up on several shows, that shows when you put in your birth certificate or your birth certificate number or your social security number, it will show money, bonds that they've opened and bonds that they're trading on you. So behind the scenes, we're being traded on, and this is truly, it's the very definition of human trafficking, and that's what they're doing. And we don't know it. They're making money off of us, similar to how, if anyone's ever deposited a check in a bank, you get a check for $10,000, you put it in the bank, you don't have access to that money for 7 to 14 days. They hold on to it. They're trading all that behind the scenes. They're making money off your money. Again, it's all without your permission. None of this is legal. They do it anyway.
That's right. So basically, a birth certificate's a document. It's issued by the state, making your child a ward of the state. That's why CPS can step in so easily, because you've already given them certificate and title of your child. It's recording your child as a new, quote, legal person. This is fiction, essentially. It does have serial numbers on it, and it's often printed on, look at your birth certificates, it's printed on what it looks like banknote quality paper. So the actual concept of parens patriae means the state legally has an interest in the welfare of all minors. And that's why CPS can act in what they believe to be in the child's best interest. They can step in like the parent. So each birth certificate since 1933 creates a secret straw man entity, and that's your name and your all caps letters. That's your legal person identity, and it's distinct, definitely distinct from you, your flesh and blood, where you might have your name in upper and lower case, right? Like I'm Ann with an uppercase A, lowercase n, and 2 N's. So this is how they create this legal fiction on your birth certificate, your social security card, driver's license, passports, whatever it is, to represent you in this corporate persona. Because again, Maureen, you are a legal scholar. Corporate entities interface with corporate entities. You can't contract people with a corporation. It has to be corporation to corporation. Is that correct?
That is correct. So what Ann is trying to say is if anyone can look on any of your government issued documents, whether it's your driver's license, your birth certificate, you're going to see your name in all caps. If you've ever been sued in court, when the court sends you any document, your name is in all caps. What that is referring to is that is your straw man. That is your corporate fiction that they created for you. Statutes, codes, policies, those don't apply to a living, breathing man. We have unalienable rights. Our Constitution, our Bill of Rights applies to us. But in order to get in, for them to get you into their corporate jurisdiction, they can only contract with a corporate entity. So many people don't know that. Many lawyers don't understand that. It's just what we're taught. So you're taught that this is just how it's done. I went to paralegal school, and we were taught that this is just how you fill out, a caption on a legal form. It says a state of whatever, and everything's in caps. And I remember asking the professor, why do you have to do it in all caps? And, that's just how it's done. And that's just how the court wants it. And if it's not done that way, then they'll throw it out. So there's never an explanation. So I'm thinking there's so many people that just don't understand. You're just told this is just how it's done. And robotically, we all just do it. And even when you question it, you just get, well, that's just how it's done. And it's done that way for a reason, because they can only contract with your corporate fiction that they created at the signing of your birth certificate.
That's right. So basically from birth, your life is documented, regulated, you're registered with the state. And this is how they could get away with mandates, right? Because you're interfacing as a corporate fiction with another corporate entity, i.e. the CDC or the NIH, whoever gives mandates to vaccinate, educate, license you throughout your life. So by signing birth certificates and later Social Security applications, parents are, frankly, they don't even know what they're doing. And that's fraud because they weren't fully informed. There was no informed consent. They've turned their child over into a ward of the state in which they're born. And, like you just said, there's instances where parents don't want to do this. They're getting educated. Like, I'm not getting a birth certificate. I don't, all these undocumented children that came into the United States, the millions of them, they don't even have birth certificates. They're undocumented. They're coming and they've been flooded in with Joe Biden's open border policies. And they want it that way because it makes it easier to make children disappear if you don't know they exist on a ledger somewhere. So this is having massive legal consequences. And like you said, CPS, we're going to talk about them in episode 3, but this is how they get control and can decide your child's fate basically consistent with the ultimatums of ownership and who gets to actually, own the child. And when you think about the fact that it becomes a state and CPS can so easily intervene, then you recognize just how much freedom and sovereignty you've given away. So, all right, I don't want to belabor this too much, but this is, a significant piece of the pie. And, there are accounts out there known as Treasury Direct, and some people have been successful at using the numbers on the back of their Social Security card to identify where their Federal Reserve account, the bank, is located, and the account number that's attached to the location of that Federal Reserve Bank, and actually had bills paid because the government did set aside and they created bonds in your name based on a whole host of things like your Social Security card, your driver's license, your passport, any court cases. Those turn into CUSIP and bonds and get sold and monetized because you are chattel. And so therefore, people are actually using those bonds or those accounts, Treasury Direct accounts, to actually pay bills. Have you had any success yourself, Maureen, in doing any of that, or have you attempted it?
I have not, but I do know people that have had their, utilities paid and that have gotten large checks. It's really fascinating. They've worked at it for years, and I have seen the checks coming from the government. And then the FBI shows up on their doorstep within days of that check being issued.
Isn't that interesting? The government doesn't want you to get access to the money that they made off of your existence. And they set it up for that specific purpose when you were a minor and you were awarded to the state and they had control. And now that you're not a minor and are taking control, they don't want to give what is supposedly rightfully yours, that they monetized you off your debt, off your sweat equity, your labor. It's such a corrupt system. They want it both ways. They want their cake and they want to eat it too, which is why you and I are working so hard with American Made Action and American Made Foundation to educate people, but to give them action steps. And I encourage you to go over to AmericanMadeAction.org. And on the top right corner of the website, there is a Take Action button. And when you read below the different actionable items we have, we do talk specifically about CPS, about defunding them, and how to restore your rights as parents. And again, this is all using common law, because as you're going to learn with what American Made Action is all about, we're all about bringing the people under the Department of Government Accountability together to take action steps, to use notices and affidavits. But also we're going to use the legal system, the stuff that they made up, their legal fiction, and we're going to use retired attorneys and judges. And we have a huge network of them. And together we're going to level lawsuits, and we're going to use common law notices to come at the corruption in the system, and not only single agencies out, but single specific people in the system out. We're about to wrap up section 3 here and move into our final segment. We're going to talk about solutions to restoring the republic, taking grassroots action, policy, advocacy, and legal challenges. Stick with us. We'll be right back, because you're only just getting started right here on American Made.
2 years ago, whatever was 100% of my traffic to my website, it's been crashed by 95%. That's stunning to me. Mostly Google has done it, but other actors as well. What's happening on a global basis, there's a war against free speech. It's not just an incidental thing, oh, we just want to shut somebody up. That's not it. This is an orchestrated, top-down war against free speech. All the things you have coming out of Worldview Tube and Weekend, etc., all of these things are expression of free speech. And I can dare say that their traffic has been hammered as well. If they're successful, these masters of tyranny, if these people are successful shutting down free speech, we're all dead at that point, basically, because that's where the killing is going to start. This is what's on the chopping block right now. The reason you look at this organization just as because you could get something out of it, right? You should look at this organization as an organization that needs to support just to keep free speech alive, period. Who are you going to turn to at this point if this voice was silenced? Where would you go? Newsmax? Give me a break. No. Fox News? No. So I want to encourage you. Support the foundation, support Brandon's work here any way that you can.
And in the opening words of the United States Constitution, we the people, not we the government, not we the World Economic Forum, or we any of the NGOs, we the people. We are the government. Well, many Americans are now organizing to return power from these entrenched institutions back to we the people, as President Trump said he was going to do in 2017 in his first inaugural address. This is an effort to restore the original constitutional republic. And Maureen and I have set on this journey because after uncovering uncomfortable truths that I think a lot of people are waking up to, American Made is now here to bring hope and to bring solutions. In our final segment, Maureen and I are going to actually explore how citizens can take action to challenge or actually reverse this alleged corporate government malfeasance and the financial enslavement in which we all find ourselves right now. We're going to be talking about the grassroots movements, the informed civic engagements, and how and why these are key to reclaiming America's founding principles. So, Maureen, again, let's just thanks for taking this big step with me to launch the show American Made. I think this is going to be quite historic, and I think we're building a curriculum here that it's easy to understand in broad topics, but we're going to start to drill down and give people specific action steps as we, advance each week with this show. But let's talk about why sovereignty is so critical and why our founding fathers, the first 10 amendments were critical to defining our unalienable rights as given to us by God, but why 10 was sort of the icing on the cake of sovereignty, to make sure that we were always sovereign from a federal government that was really only there to protect us, to defend us in times of trouble. And it's become something so much more. Why is the 10th so important?
The 10th Amendment is critical because it puts the power back to the states. And that is how a constitutional republic is created. Our federal government is bloated. It is huge. It was never meant to be that. The federal government should be very small. It's there to protect our borders, which they didn't do, and to protect us in war, military. But it's not there for everything. In fact, the federal government, I believe, at least last I checked, is the largest employer in our country. This isn't a mistake. This is overly bloated because if your employer is the government, what are the odds of you rising up against that government? Very slim, because you're going to lose your job. So this was, again, it was all very well planned, but all the power needs to be back in the states. They're supposed to be run like little countries. We're all one country, but each state is sovereign, and each state should have its own government set up. With its own laws and rules and borders that are protected, in addition to our national borders. And that has, slipped by the wayside. But one point I wanted to make, and I think it's very important that people understand, even though we're telling you that our federal government is a corporation, every state is a corporation, most do, like the post office in your town, it's a corporation. Everything has been corporatized. But the fact that they have all sworn oaths to the Constitution is the game changer. If you're going to hang yourself out there that you swore to, honor the Constitution, whether you're a corporation or not, you must do that. So we can still hold them to the same standards as if they weren't a corporation in the first place, just because of the oaths that they swore, and all the rules and that they put together. That those oaths must be filed in a certain way, and they're not. So that makes pretty much everyone. There was a national movement a number of years ago called Bonds for the Win, and there was a nationwide audit on school boards. And the school board members, there wasn't one who had a proper oath of office, and it wasn't filed properly, which made all of them committing fraud. We just, in audit, Todd Callender and his team, Lisa McGee, they did an audit of Biden's cabinet. Not one of them had a properly filed oath. Right. Judge Boasberg does not have a properly filed oath, right. And I can only imagine that no one does. There hasn't been one properly filed oath that we've FOIA'd, which makes them committing a crime. They're impersonating a federal officer. They don't hold that office properly. So this has left it wide open for us to go after all of them criminally and ouster every single one of them, because they're all imposters and they have no business being in the seat that they're holding.
It's a constitutional crisis, Maureen. I mean, this really is a place that we haven't found ourselves, and we didn't know we were at this point for quite some time. It's just now till recently, because we're seeing across the country activists like you've been out being an activist for a long time. We're also seeing state legislatures. Some of the states legislators, have actually been pushing back on the federal overreach. Not all, but some, and those the few, the good, the proud. But state legislatures have introduced the state sovereignty resolutions, and they're reaffirming the 10th Amendment. They're saying, hey, we're seeing it here in Florida, Collier County, for instance, right? So said no to the mandates, and they put up a Bill of Rights sanctuary county ordinance that passed. 4 out of 5 said yes to that, which I think was tremendous, because their county commission recognized that there was mass overreach coming from the federal government. So basically, you're starting to see states stand up, and they're serving notice to Washington District of Corruption to cease and desist any and all activities outside the scope of their constitutionally delegated powers, which is why the 10th Amendment is so powerful. Although these actions are largely symbolic, They have been actually passed in states like Tennessee, Oklahoma, and a few others. They're putting DC on notice. The states are considering the federal government to be a creation of the states, but not their master. So once we really, I think, put that into a lens and start to dial in on that, I think we're going to start to see more and more states become liberated. And here in Florida, we just literally, both the state house and the state senate passed that gold and silver are now legal tender here in the state of Florida. And Governor DeSantis, believe it or not, has got it on his desk and he says he's going to sign it. That is liberating from the Federal Reserve in so many levels. I mean, think about how we're pulling the Jenga blocks out from underneath these deep state tyrannists that have been the international banking cabal that has, put us into this debt slavery with the 16th Amendment and all the other ancillary pieces, like you said, the birth certificate, the Federal Reserve, income tax. It's all part of this corporate debt slavery. So we, I believe, are going to get behind a lot of these state and local candidates. They're going to push back. This is where we are right now. So monetary reform, Maureen, ending the debt cycle. Let's talk about steps to reduce the debt slavery by demanding transparency and reform on the Federal Reserve, auditing the Fed, right? That gained huge support. Where are we with that right now? Are you hearing anything?
No, I'm not. I haven't heard anything about the golden Fort Knox either that we were supposed to see. Yeah, there's so many things that we were supposed to see, and this was supposed to be a very transparent, executive, cabinet there, and we haven't seen a lot of transparency. And I'm hoping that in the very short future that we do, it's very necessary for the people to really see what has gone on and expose the corruption. Another big player here is Maximus. It is a shadow government. It is a corporation. It's traded on NASDAQ, and they literally have every database, and they do all the financing for every agency in our federal government, and many, all the way down to the county level. We pay them hundreds of millions of dollars a year per agency for efficiency. And once we see what DOGE is doing, you can see that there is no efficiency. Billions of dollars of Medicare, Medicaid payments are going over to Europe. To who? So there is no efficiency there. And again, there's another layer of corporatocracy, another corporation involved. And you don't hear it mentioned. That's something that I find fascinating. If DOGE is looking at accounts, they'd have to be looking at the software of Maximus. And that you never hear a peep about Maximus. And I think that's very telling because they are the shadow government.
They are the shadow government. I'd like to just take a pause here because this show is going to be building a curriculum weekly here on Worldview Tube, American Made. So Maureen and I are going to be really doing our best to educate you. But I want to bring you back to our website, and I want to take you to the Action website. If we can go to AmericanMadeAction.org. I want to just kind of talk about this because I think it's important the last few minutes we have left to kind of get you up to speed, because this is going to be your resource tool where you're going to come and find regularly new notices, new affidavits, and new information. And I want you to understand your actions. The Department of Government Accountability on our website under AmericanMadeAction.org. When you look at DOGA, D-O-G-A, the Department of Government Accountability, that's where the people are going to come and get educated about what's happening. There is a reckoning. There is a rising that's happening right now as the American people sort of come out of the fog of war, the war that has been on them, this debt slave war that we've been involved in it for quite some time. It's also been a massive information war to keep us in the debt slave cycle. But we are the last stand. We are the government, and we can't kneel. We must stand right now, because between the people, Department of Government Accountability, and our United Law Coalition, where we have a network of hundreds and hundreds of attorneys and retired judges that are coming out of retirement to come together and say, you know what, we are not going to stand for this weaponized criminal government that is using corporate fiction and agencies that are not part of our original charters of freedom, our original Constitution. We're going to fight them with the same fire they've been fighting against the people. And it's going to be the people using common law under DOJA, and it's going to be the attorneys that understand just how our freedoms are being usurped, using their same legal fiction against those that are weaponizing legal fiction against us. And together, we're going to take back our republic. So this website is going to be a critical piece and an arrow in your quiver when it comes to fighting this judicial tyranny, this corporate fiction, this hostile takeover by corporate entities who have basically just invaded every aspect of our government and stripped us of our freedoms. And they wrap it up and they call it a constitution, but it's anything but. They're not following it, Maureen. So I really want to highlight this website because I do think it's critically important that people understand that. And also understand that as we progress every week, we're going to take topics. Next week's show is going to be called We the Chattel. And we're going to really take a deep dive on what it means to become corporate slaves and debt slaves and how we got here. We're going to break it down into a finer point because we just talked about it quickly, but I know you have a lot more questions. And Maureen, this is a topic I know is near and dear to her heart because she understands what it's like to be chattel. Maureen, you've been a victim of CPS because they felt like they could take your kids from you, and you understand how this whole system operates. We've got about 30 seconds left.
Yeah, and what people really need to understand as far as Doja goes, this is a grassroots movement by the people for the people, and that is what our government is. We are the government, but we're supposed to be instructing our servants, our public servants. And so if we don't tell them en masse what we want them to do and what we don't want them to do, then they don't know. Then they're going to do whatever they want to do. And that's what we've been doing, nothing. And we're always told, well, next vote, vote for somebody else. No, we don't have to tolerate tyranny. We don't have to tolerate them violating the Constitution. That's treason. Those are crimes, and that makes them a criminal for doing that. Criminals shouldn't be serving in the Congress and the Senate. They shouldn't be serving anywhere. A sheriff, a police officer.
Right.
So we need to be putting them on notice and then following that up. We're going to have a lot of criminal charges coming down on a lot of people just out of pure ignorance. They just simply don't know what the supreme law of the land is.
Well, that's what our show is about, American made, and everything that we talk about is American made. Our founding fathers helped basically deliver us from tyranny into God's second covenant nation, and we're going to restore that republic with all of your help. Thank you so much for tuning into our very first episode here on American Made. I'm Ann Vandersteel, my co-host Maureen Steele. We'll see you next week.
This is Brannon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon House.
On this May 16th, 2025. My guest tonight is going to be the weaponization czar for President Donald J. Trump. Mr. Ed Martin joins us tonight in an exclusive interview. And then we'll be joined by Todd Bensman to talk about the decision today by the U.S. Supreme Court related to getting illegal immigrants out of the U.S. We'll also be joined by Olivier Melnick. Kanye West, I guess, put out a song not too long ago that is praising Hitler. Sure looks like that to me. I guess the words Heil Hitler in there. We're going to talk about that and the rise of anti-Semitism. It's certainly growing. And we'll talk about the red heifers in Israel. Where are we at with these red heifers? Who else do we have, Logan? Oh, Dr. Lucky is going to join us tonight to talk about inflammation. And we got a great testimony. We got a great testimony by one of our viewers today. His wife was having leg pain for 10 years. The doctors could not figure out why. She got on Bella Grace, and a week later, leg pain gone. That's that anti-inflammation in that Bella Grace. So a big lineup. But man, tonight, first up, after our little birthday party for our studio dog, Dolly, first up, Mr. Ed Martin, weaponization czar for Donald Trump. Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, and more. Get the word out. Get them here, worldviewtube.com. Yes, May 16th means it is Dolly, our studio dog Dolly's first birthday. Come on over here, kids. The other dogs have decided to come to the studio and take part in the celebration. Where's the other one? Where's the little black schnauzer? All right, so Melissa.